Hello, this is Nicholas Moore. When was the thought of the... When was that thought of that? Because of the idea of putting like Raymond Brainiac and Ms. Jingles, the way I come up with the idea of those two cartoon characters that I made it up. The way I did something is just the way I did something that did come about. I usually like to draw of a human brain character with a thin body. It was easy for me to draw. It was usually to be like Dr. Brainiac, because it was usually to be reminding me of this Billy and Mandy cartoon called Moon the Moon, which was like when Billy played up with an action figure, what he called this action figure named Dr. Brainiac, because I don't know what that is. I don't know what he get that made it up. And when I was about in middle school and high school, and I get a lot of troubles here with trouble making children, and those and my friends, well, they end up like little kids, but they end up like little kids too, like a preschool and kindergarten and whatever that might be, like elementary school kids. They just behave like little kids too. Kids can be kids. And my friend and I usually like to watch The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and SpongeBob SquarePants. Well, the same thing, because of the same thing of those two cartoon characters. That is about, like, they end up like little kids. Like Billy from Billy and Mandy and SpongeBob. Well, those two behave like little kids too. And I give them the idea at the last moment. I thought, you know, I think kids can behave like little kids. Well, we kind of like kids can behave like little kids too. That's the most childish thing that we ever thought of that. But I did come up with that problem. So I quickly drew of a human brain character with a thin body, floppy feet, and wearing a hat that reminded me of Billy and SpongeBob. I drew the character which he reminded me of a 15-year-old human brain character. And he's only 15 years old, and he cares so much about that, cares so much about living on the world of his own. So I named the character Raymond. So he just reminded me of the movie Raymond, the 1988 film that is about like movies, that is about like the actors who acted like having autism. Well, like any other characters, if you like getting into a character who acted up like autism, don't blame for that. Nothing about the report that from Autism Speaks online community. They don't have reporting about like actors who acted out like having autism, like real people in the real world. I mean, it's kind of like that, really. My mother and I liked that movie, and I named it him right after the movie. And for Raymond Brainiac, I basically, to know something is where he's basically like a little kid. He's wearing like a 3-year-old tight clothes. He's wearing like 3-year-old clothes that they're being so tight, wearing floppy feet, like Goofy from like Goofy, whatever that might be like. And about a year later, wearing like cartoon gloves, particularly like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny, and like a Disney and Warner Brothers cartoons. It only started off in the old days. And the way I come up with the idea to make up for this behavior / influence of the character, which he may be like, I basically drew Raymond's eyes dots, and his eyes began spinning around, because it did make work like in the Thomas the Tank Engine cartoons. Well, Well, I've seen that cartoon a lot of times when I was a little kid. A lot of times I grew up that I love, Thomas too. Well, this cartoon of the formatting of the animation. They were not like drawn, they were not like being animated from that style between like Disney, Warner Brothers, and anime. Well, Disney, Looney Tunes, and anime. Well, I've seen the illustrations. Well, they worked from the influence of the animation. Well, particularly like hand-drawn animation. This cartoon of the formatting of the animation is like filmed with live action of model trains. And I liked film with model trains. But, those are cartoons which started in first public airing on London in mid of 1984. But until the early of 1989, they brought those Thomas cartoons to a kids show called Shining Time Station, where every one of the American viewers would like to see any other Thomas and the other characters have their eyes spinning around and there's eyes rolling around like that. Well, that depends. It was kind of looked really funny to me. I thought it did only work like in Looney Tunes. My father and I usually like Daffy Duck because he likes Daffy Duck because he's going so crazy. Those cartoons were started off from the 30s and 40s, and he's going like whooping and yelling and go crazy and go out of control. Well, because someone must have been made it up in those Warner Brothers cartoons. And I began basically imitating Daffy Duck's voice when I'm acting out. So, yeah, so that's a life here from now on now, buddy old pal. So, cause you, sir, are so despicable. I've heard like any other Daffy Duck cartoons. I've heard anything about that. My father and I like Daffy Duck, so... and I began basically imitating Daffy Duck's voice because I usually made it up because I've heard anything about that. Mel Blanc, who started off to do the voice of Daffy. So that, my little sub, is strictly as a matter of opinion. Well, it didn't only work like that for Raymond's life. But he comes out, he behaves like a little kid, but he likes his two favorite cartoon characters. So, I thought that really looked so silly enough to entertain little children. Miss Jingles the Cabbit is the 3-year-old Raymond Brainiac's pet Cabbit. It's rather like to be called a cat rabbit. Around that same time I usually liked anime. But I've seen things like a cute little animal in an anime series called Tenchi. I mean, this character named like Ryo-Oki. It's a very cute little animal because she's rather worth more cute expressions to see how she looks so hyper combination between like a cat and a rabbit, and I thought that was so cute, and I thought that would give me a concept in my mind because I thought it was cute to be a good friend of Raymond Brainiac. So what a great character that would be like. Miss Jingles, who often play like juggling balls, and then she realized she works at the circus. And I drew the picture I gave the copy of that character, reminded me of Ryo-Oki because it's easy for me to draw the Cabbit on my sketches. And so she was like wearing this clown hat, not like a Christmas elf hat, like a clown hat. But it's easy for me to do that because she is basically not less like a clown. And for And the name of Miss Jingles, she, because that name reminded me of the adaptation of the book and the film called The Green Mile, and it was by Stephen King. I knew that the character right after the movie because it was named Miss Jingles. It's rather like to pronounce like Mr. Jingles, but it's really confusing to do that. It was like a mouse character right after that because Miss Jingles turns out she's a girl. And Mr. Jingles, it's always been a mouse. When it comes out, he's just a boy. Okay, that really confused to me. I started off with the, well, it is easy for me to do that. And I've convinced to bring Raymond Brainiac and Ms. Jingles to life on the screen. I've started it for once when I come up with the idea as an animator. And I usually drew them as a cartoonist to show how much I've been so kind enough to be kind and gentle about, see how much about autism. So it was more, well, it will be fine enough for children and for people, and like any other people with autism. Said, okay, we kind of like being kind, gentle, and just have so much fun together like friends. Well, it will be turned enough, really fine enough as an audience to show it up as a preview on television.